And we're back. I'm Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems. With me is Professor Scott Plum of the Minnesota Sales Institute.
Every day we take on adversity, some days more than others. Sometimes it is initiated by us, others from somebody else. If we don't manage and leverage adversity productively, we either grow or become stagnant through unconscious complacency. So get focused and ready to learn as Bill and I discuss complacency with special guest Ronn Lehmann and much more on episode 425 of Get in the Door podcast.
So we are getting ready to wrap up the book, The Challenger Sale, Taking Control of the Customer Conversation. We are in chapter 8. And this is the manager and the challenger selling model. And Scott, this was a huge chapter.
It really was.
I know you found one area important. I want to read one of the opening paragraphs. As a research organization devoted to improving sales performance, we've studied every topic in the sales world, and the message from the data is always the same. If you don't get frontline sales managers on board, the initiative will fail. Give some examples. The frontline sales manager in any sales organization is the fundamental link between strategy and execution. This is where change initiatives and Salesforce transformation live or die. What do you say to that?
I think in addition to the frontline sales managers, it's also important for the C-level to be involved. So often I've been invited in to work with a company. I got the sales manager, I got the sales team, but I don't have the C-level involved in the training classes. And It gets to be a real mismatch between C-level leadership and the frontline management. And as we talk more about this topic, between the difference between training and coaching and business results versus managing behavior, we end up getting a real mismatch. So I've been in situations where the leadership is looking at business results and the sales management is looking at activities, and there's this frustrational conversation between the two. So the C-level needs to be involved in it also. Otherwise, there's great adversity in the sales culture of the company.
Yeah, whenever I have started a sales program, an improvement program at the sales manager level, what they really want to do is blame their people. And it's kind of a fix this team and we'll get better.
Right.
And often when I get into it, I find out the sales manager is the problem. And early in my career, I made the mistake. I was doing a negotiations program. Sales manager said the team fell over and laid over on their back every time they did a negotiation. When I got into the class, it turned out that the reason they started doing that was because the sales manager was doing that so he would look good. And he was the real problem. So when I told him about that, he fired me.
Yeah, that's the way it happens.
That's right, because he didn't want to hear the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
That's right. And he wanted, and that's why I think you're absolutely right. We need to get to the C-level, somebody who has got an overreaching desire, not just to fix the sales team, which quite often does need some improvement, but also to fix the way the sales manager is running the program, because quite often they are not doing their job. So what are some of the factors that they talked about in the book?
Well, on the topic of the management, there's also some great managers that also serve as great insulation between leadership. Insulation between the C-level and the frontline salespeople. And I've met some great managers that are able to really change the conversation and the pressure from the C-level and really turn it, kind of like playing the game Tetris, into a way where the sales team is able to incorporate it and still have that motivation, but it's just managed and directed later. Mm-hmm. So some of the things that this is a really deep chapter between coaching and training.
Well, I want to go back for a second on what you were just saying, because I'm trying to look up the term. I think they called it commander. What did they call that? Commander's intent. Commander's intent they talked about. And what the key idea on that was, and I thought this was very valuable, is that when a leader like a sales manager gets information from the C-level, we need to increase sales, or we need to increase profitability by 10%, whatever that is, right? Mm-hmm. Then it's this person's job to translate that into activity on the ground, not to be overmanaged, but to have the capabilities as a salesperson, as a coach, as a leader, to translate that large objective into daily work with the
Mm-hmm.
team. And I thought
Right.
that was really interesting. And then I think we go into what you saw were the pieces of that.
Yeah. And we touched a little bit on the episode on managing your numbers. And there's three separate steps. There's the activities, there's the objectives, and then there's the business results. And we can't necessarily control the business results directly. We can manage it through activities and reaching objectives.
Yeah, and one of the ways they talk about doing that, obviously, is through coaching,
Mm-hmm.
in that we need to coach our team more effectively and be able to help them improve. And they use a process called the pause structure, which I thought was really good. Prepare for the interaction of the coaching opportunity, build or affirm the relationship, build that relationship that this is trusting, understand the current behavior, help them understand what you've observed, and then specify what behavior change you want to make, and then help over time to embed those new behaviors. So I like that structure that they did. But one of the things I saw was most important was that the highest impact of coaching is on your core performers, your center, not your star performers, because they're already doing great, and a lot of coaching will just only small incremental changes. That doesn't mean don't coach them.
Mm-hmm.
But where they really said that doesn't do any good is on your low performers. They said you cannot coach somebody who's in the wrong job to make that job fit.
Right. And sometimes that's more training. One of the things that I took away from the chapter is formalized sales coaching represents one of the biggest opportunities to improve a rep's performance in a complex sales environment, but is also one of the most misunderstood and mismanaged productive levers when it comes to working with a sales team. And coaching is ongoing, it's customized, it's focused on behavior, versus training is good for sharing knowledge. And coaching is about acting on that knowledge. And it's always, the success always comes in the application of the content. It's not the content alone, it's what you do with the content.
I've certainly moved toward a model that is training with coaching, and coaching especially that sales manager, not just the teams. But I think it's really important to understand that if someone doesn't fit in a job, sometimes all the training and coaching in the world isn't going to help them. And you've probably been put in this situation. Here's my worst guy, fix him.
Right, exactly.
And I say, he's unfixable. He's your worst guy for a reason. He's not interested. He doesn't want to do the job. Don't give me your poor, tired, wretched masses, right? Give me your better people, and let's put time and money and effort into your better people. Training, to its credit, can be an effective number. I'm going to put my low performers, my mid performers, and my star performers all in training, and it costs the same.
Right.
But coaching is an investment of time over time. And I just can't put it into my low performers unless they've really shown that they want to make a change.
I've been in that situation too, Bill, where somebody gives me the person that's lowest on the productivity leaderboard, and they say, go work with them. And I go, why do you want to keep them? Why don't you just fire them?
Right.
And they're like, well, and they come up with, I said, and I really want them to think about the key assets of that individual that they end up concentrating on. But then my next question is, what are the consequences if they don't change? And so often company leadership has no consequences. So today we're going to talk about complacency. So now you've got salespeople that drift into complacency. Leadership endorses it. I mean, they just put a stamp of approval on it because there are no consequences if you don't do anything different. I mean, if you don't change, no problem. And life goes on.
So any sum ups for this chapter?
One thing I really like is about effectiveness versus efficiency. And so often leadership in a company or even management level looks at efficiency when we should be looking at effectiveness. What is most effective? And when we become committed to most effective, efficiency starts to improve. So we need to be able to get that in order. And we also need to know that the difference between traditional coaching is more focused on business results, not behavior. And it's delivered, one size fits all. Everybody gets the same treatment. The challenger sales coaching is focused on behaviors and not outcomes. And that's, I think, one thing that we really need to be able to understand. And Bill and I love to do coaching. It's really a way for us to engage with our listeners, with our clients, to be able to make a very personal change in an organization's culture, which then can carry on over the years, and individuals feel better about themselves, their attitude changes, their behavior is more efficient and effective, and it just creates obviously better business results.
Yeah. And the way I would wrap up this chapter is don't spend productive time on non-productive people.
Right. Yeah.
Go find a better match for your business and save yourself a lot of time and trouble, and then coach them.
Exactly.
Do the training and coaching that it takes. So
this segment of Get in the Door podcast is brought to you by The Art of Prospecting, your guide to getting in the door, by Steve Kloida.
Steve Kloida was known internationally for increasing salespeople's ability to make solid appointments with qualified prospects. You too can learn this essential skill by ordering a copy of his superb book, The Art of Prospecting, your guide to getting in the door. In this book, Steve shares the top strategies and tactics he has developed, implemented, and personally tested with more than 1 million sales and prospecting calls. You can get his book on the website, theprospectingexpert.com. In addition, check out his other great online resources. Instant Sales Coaching, which will guide you through 5 online success modules. A guided prospecting process entitled Call Reluctance Transformer, and the Magnetic Selling Strategies Workbook, a detailed step-by-step guide to increasing your sales. Get any of these valuable resources at theprospectingexpert.com.
We're really fortunate today to have Ronn Lehmann with us as a guest. We're going to be talking about complacency. Bill and I are going to pepper him with some questions, but what you're really going to learn more about is Ronn's answers. And I've heard Ronn present a few times. I'm really grateful that he's with us today. He's going to be able to really give us insight on what complacency is. And I think in this marketplace, it's very easy for us to become unconsciously complacent. Ronn, great to have you with us. Thanks.
Welcome, Ronn.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. It's a privilege to be with you.
Thank you. So we've got a few questions, and I'll start off by, can you just tell us a little bit about your background, where you've been, what you've seen, where you're trying to get?
Absolutely. I am a consultant in the area of the human factors of work, and that can be quality and productivity and safety and profitability and everything that comes into play in terms of how we humans go about working. And I'm endlessly fascinated with the subject of how we do things, because in any given day, I can be the greatest employee you've ever had, and an hour later, I'm going to be your worst nightmare, and 20 minutes after that, I'm back to being pretty good. We're astonishing in that we can accomplish amazing things, and we can also create incredible havoc. And so there's a lot of factors that go into what we are as humans, and as I say, I'm endlessly fascinated by the way we kind of go about things and how we can use what we have, those human factors, to be at our best as often as possible.
Mm-hmm. Today's topic is on complacency. So how do you define complacency?
The textbook definition of complacency is self-satisfaction, especially when accompanied by unawareness of actual dangers or deficiencies. And my short version of that is we stop paying attention. We stop paying attention to what we're doing, how we're thinking, what's been working for us, what's happening around us, and the little subtle changes that may be going on. So
is that just like being distracted? Or is that one function?
It's actually kind of the other side of it. Can be distraction because we can get complacent by being unfocused, but there's really something beneath that. This is more, we just sort of get on autopilot. Okay. And especially when, it's especially prevalent when things are going well, because things are going well. So why should I pay attention? Let's just keep doing what we're doing. And the key of that textbook definition is unawareness of actual dangers or deficiencies. So we're just not paying attention to the potential dangers or where we're slipping away from what has been our success pattern. And I think it's especially true in those situations where we kind of have this mindset that says, if things are going well, they will continue forever.
Yeah. Yeah. I can remember a situation when I had what we call, in the sales field, an elephant, right? I had a big client and things were going great. And I just didn't do the other work that I needed to do.
Yeah, we get away from success patterns. Yeah, and at that point, we can often be shaken out of our complacency, but that's a very expensive way to find out we've been complacent.
Mm-hmm. So is this kind of like being in a comfort zone? Because I think we strive for comfort.
Of course, it absolutely is. I mean, we love to be in our comfort zone. It's comfortable, and it's also extremely knowable. We know what's in the comfort zone. We understand everything, and it gives us a sense of control that, well, inside the comfort zone, I am the master of my destiny. Mm-hmm. I control everything. The problem is that the rest of the world operates outside of our comfort zone. And we have to, in order to break out of complacency, we have to get out of our comfort zone. Now, we don't have to go 5 miles outside of our comfort zone, but you got to be constantly pressing on the boundaries of your comfort zone, because that's where learning is, and that's where growth is. If I'm in my comfort zone, I know I'm as smart as I'm ever going to be. Learning does not permeate that barrier. We have to go out and get it. Mm-hmm. And amazingly, as we all know, when you go out and get it, it's uncomfortable at first. It's something new, but after a while, it becomes, our comfort zone increases.
Is it always, do I always have to work outside my comfort zone to be successful? I mean, one of the things I like to do is perhaps network with people. So I do a lot of that in order to build my business. Do I always have to go, well, I must be making cold calls or I'm not going to ever be successful? I have to go find that thing I hate to do and do more of it.
No, not at all. But you have to do it regularly. You don't have to spend your whole day outside your comfort zone, because there's some really good things in your comfort zone. It's everything you've learned to this point. So, you want to balance it. But I think complacency is you don't even look beyond your comfort zone. You just stay in there, whether that's unconsciously or consciously. So it's just like, I think, everything in scheduling your time in sales. I'm going to spend this much time and energy on prospecting. I'm going to spend this much time on energy on client building. I'm going to spend this much time on understanding the industry. Whatever that is, if you build a little time in each of those, or something different to say, I'm going to just be uncomfortable doing this. Mm-hmm. And that may be, I've always done this the same way. I'm going to try something a little bit different. And what I find is, when I find the courage to do that, one of the things that helps me is I tell my clients, I'm going to try something different now. So bear with me. And if it doesn't work, you let me know and we'll never do it again. And I'm going to race back to my comfort zone. And I find people are really willing to go, yeah, well, I'll tolerate this. As long as I tell them what I'm doing. It's my intention is to try and learn something and try something different. It's not my intention to, mess this up or do something different. So it's a struggle for all of us because the comfort zone's comfortable and we like to be comfortable, especially in times like this.
But just because I've tried something outside my comfort zone and it didn't work, I shouldn't just jettison it so quickly.
No, absolutely. It's, what can I learn from this? Was it a matter of I tried something new and I didn't execute it well? Okay, so maybe I need to work on my execution of this idea. Or did I try something, I did it perfectly and it failed miserably? Well, maybe it was with this particular client. Or, it's a constant sort of, like everything, is analysis, looking at it, what can I learn? So those after action reviews. Mm-hmm. Okay, this just happened. What happened? What does it mean? How can I do it differently, make it better? But that discipline of always examining and, thinking about what you did, to me, that's always been the thing that separates great salespeople from run-of-the-mill. It's not necessarily behaviors, it's how they think about and how often they think about what they do. And it's, you can consider that strategic, but a lot of people can execute the behaviors, but it's the people that are thinking about it and thinking about what else could I do? How can I do this differently? What's working, what isn't, that really makes the difference.
In my book, Taking Off Into the Wind, one of my chapters is titled No Wonder, No Change. And if we don't stop and wonder about something in ways that we can improve it, we're in our complacency. I mean, we're in our comfort zone and we're around what's most familiar to us and we feel safe. I love going around the room of a class and saying, where are we most comfortable and how much time do we spend there? And it's amazing how much time people spend in their comfort zone. And sometimes being in the office is your comfort zone when you end up selling real estate and nobody in the office is going to buy anything from you.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. It's like I used to work with a guy who his sales manager used to walk in the office and go, we're not making any sales here. I don't see any customers.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody out. Let's go open up the valves.
Right.
But I two thoughts on that. I love the sense of wonder. I think that's great. Another way to say it is curiosity.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Are you curious about your industry, about how you go about work, about the world in general? Because I think curiosity is the antidote to complacency.
Exactly.
The other thing I wanted to say is, when you, Scott, when you go around the room and ask people, are you in your comfort zone? If nobody answers, I guess it's yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because people don't want to say anything.
That's right. Or they're so afraid of going outside their comfort zone and answering something.
Yeah.
They're busy thinking, what does he mean by that? This looks dangerous.
Is this a trick question? I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably.
Aren't they all trick questions?
Are there different types of complacency, Ron?
Well, yeah, I think there's some human factors that we're all susceptible to. Just systematic desensitization is one where I know it's really, doesn't that sound impressive?
Yeah, I'm sure that's happening to me most times.
I went to the big university, so I can use big words like this, but here's what it means.
Okay.
If we get desensitized, if we hear something over and over and over again, or if we do something over and over and over again, our brains sort of get used to it, and they just, the brain's busy, got a lot of stuff to pay attention to. And, brain studies have shown that we can hold about 1 gigabyte of information in our brain, which is a little dispiriting since you can buy a 100 gigabyte thumb drive from Amazon for $5.
Right.
1 gig. And so the brain really has to compartmentalize and say, what do we need to focus on? And so it's got all these subconscious and unconscious systems that just sort of run. And I'm absolutely simplifying this, but if you do something over and over, the brain kind of moves that to, we got this. Let's do it. Okay, we can just operate unconsciously now.
Right. A friend of mine calls that the phase.
Yeah,
it's just the
absolutely.
It's just, we don't have to think about everything we do while we're driving.
Or breathing.
Right.
That's
good.
It just happens. Yeah. I mean, it's really good to have that system. It works really well for us. But I think, you were talking earlier about, sales managers. If you go in and say the same thing to salespeople over and over again, they're not hearing it anymore.
Right.
And I'm a firm believer in, change up your method, but don't change your message. So give the same message, be consistent, but change the way you talk about it, or tell a story, or do something, because as humans, we just get desensitized, and eventually we just get complacent. We get back on that autopilot.
I think that's why in sports they fire the coach every once in a while.
Well, it's cheaper.
Well, but they've all heard it.
Yeah.
I've heard your shtick before, and it may be true, but I'm just not hearing it anymore. So you got to shake it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think, a lot of times if I'm a sales manager, I get in my comfort zone and I say, I'd say the same things or do the same things. And I have to be pushed out of that or push myself out of that to change that message. Otherwise, and it's just, again, it's human nature. We are all susceptible to we get desensitized to it. It's something that, and I'll just get on my, bang the spoon on the high chair a little bit here, but I find so much of advertising is based on the idea that just pummel them with it. Just run the same ad 150 times and it will seep deep into the brain. Well, desensitization says, I stopped listening. And it's in there somewhere, but it's, I don't think it's on my ready access part of my brain, but that's kind of how they run that business.
I didn't know where Giza was until I started watching TV, those Giza sheets,
It's amazing. And, I'm sure it works to some, you'll find yourself whistling a theme song and you go, where did that come from?
Right.
But, the brain's an amazing thing.
So, Ron, are there some activities we can do if we find ourselves caught in a feeling of complacency? What can we do to break out of it?
Well, I think the first thing to do is really make sure you're paying attention to warning signs, because there's some things that if you find yourself, and again, you got to pay attention, but if you find yourself just kind of going along, and during this time of COVID, it's so easy to just one day looks like the next. If you find yourself just kind of going along, with the flow and maybe not necessarily getting out of your comfort zone, or you're doing what everyone else is doing, or you're responding as opposed to being proactive, that's a sign of complacency. If you're bored, if you have trouble focusing, if you don't have any desire to learn anything new or stay proficient in what you're good at, and finally, and this is a big one, you just start to accept lower standards. Because one of the things that can happen is there's a thing, and this is another real fancy term, called normalization of deviance, which is not as fun as it sounds.
Wow.
But what that means is, if you're a good, successful salesperson, you have a success pattern, and here's the things I do when I'm at my best, and you start to slip slightly away. So taking prospecting, let's say I say, every week I make 10 prospecting contacts, and then, this week I could only do 8. And next week I did 8 again, and that seems to be okay. And pretty soon it's 7, and pretty soon it's 6, and pretty soon you're not doing any. You start to slip away, and it usually is very subtle at first. And all of a sudden you wake up one day and you go, I'm not doing prospecting calls anymore. Or you don't wake up and you can't figure out why your pipeline's empty.
Right.
It's the strangest thing. Someone must have shut it off. So that's the first step, is, really look for those warning signs. The next thing is to really realize that complacency is always a choice. And you're either making that choice subconsciously or unconsciously, or you can consciously make it. And I vote conscious at all times. I just find I'm better when I'm conscious. So, 3 things you can do right now is just pay attention to your mindset. How are you thinking about what you're doing all day long? Because I know we've all had the experience where one minute it's 8:30 in the morning and the next minute it's 5 o'clock, and you don't know how you got there. The more dangerous one is, you're driving and you can't remember how you got to work. And the breaking glass and screeching of brakes behind you didn't really get your attention. So be mindful and make conscious choices. And whatever you choose, just you own that, but you say, I'm going to choose to stay in my comfort zone right now. And that's okay. I'm going to choose to get out of it a little bit. Pay attention to those things that can create complacency. By the way, fatigue and stress are huge contributors to complacency. Yeah. And I think we're all going through stress right now. And what I think is interesting is complacency existed, but it's kind of taken a different form now, because we can get used to anything. And I think now we're, several months into this, we've sort of gotten into some new routines, new habits. Zoom calls were a strange thing a few months ago, and now it's kind of how we just go about our day. But now we can get complacent in these times. And another thing is to really know what makes you successful. Be a conscious competent. Know why you're good, and what you're good at, because not only does that allow you to fix things if they go sideways, but it also allows you to be a teacher for others. Because
I think negative self-talk can cause us to thrive on complacency, meaning, nobody's buying right now, or it's hard to meet with people. And we kind of rationalize our complacency and then start agreeing with ourselves on it.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's always a million good reasons not to do what we know we should do. And, we can find a million reasons not to make a cold call, or to, do an email to someone that we hardly know. There's a million reasons. I don't want to bother them. They're probably busy. I don't even know if they're working. Nobody picks up the phone anymore. So why would have been, let's see, I could, what? And the other one, denial and delay are really good too, because rather than, send an email contact, I'm going to spend 4 hours crafting the email.
Right.
And then
researching the company.
That's right.
I know people who are great researchers, and they will do research to death but never really pick up the phone or send the email. Right. And then you got, the spray and pray method is I'll just send them out with no knowledge of anything. I teach a writing workshop for salespeople. And one of especially about crafting good emails that'll work. And one of the things that the people who've been in those classes start sending me bad marketing emails that they get. And I've got a wonderful collection of terrible writing. But my favorite is when they misunderstand the gender.
Oh.
So they'll send something to Kathy and it'll say Mr. It's like, wow, you really did your research.
Yeah.
And my favorite is I have an email where the person misspells their own company name 3 different ways.
Oh my goodness.
So anyway.
Goodness. So what's your final thought for us, Ron? What can we do to?
I will echo something that you talked about in the beginning of this, which is take action. Do something. Intellectual information is great, but the difference is, and of course the great Steve Clody used to say this all the time, it's what we do with what we've learned. And so when it comes to complacency, take some action. It can be little things, but just examine any habits you've fallen into. Are they working for you? Great, keep them. If they're not, change them. And it takes 21 days to change a habit, but you start, and pretty soon that becomes the new neural pathway and becomes a new habit for you in the new way you do things. And the other thing is, as you mentioned, get out of your comfort zone just a little bit. Just get a little uncomfortable. And if you find yourself spending 5 days in a row where you're totally comfortable, you're complacent.
Well, Ron, thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully we can have you back in the future. I know complacency isn't the only topic that that you can talk about. And so we'll look forward to having you back in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ron.
Scott, do you have some resources?
I've got a blog titled You Don't Need to Educate Your Prospects. And Bill has a video on the full sales funnel. So check that out. And I'm going to ask Ron to share some information that he has on complacency. So we'll have that in the show notes too. If you want to check that out, you can get a little bit more of the notes that Ron talked about and his contact information. And if you wish somebody listening to this podcast, that might be a good way to invite Ron in too. So we'll have that in the show notes at getinthedoorpodcast.com.
This segment has been brought to you by the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program, presented by the hosts of the Get in the Door podcast.
Business is heating up, and now is the time to get back on the selling track. While others wait for the market to improve, prospects and opportunities await you now. Perhaps you want to be more productive on your prospecting, or you'd like to increase your closing percentage. Maybe having meetings online is not as comfortable as being in person. Sales reps are telling us they need some honest accountability and skill development to rise above the competition. Whatever your reason, this is the perfect time to engage with an experienced sales coach. That is why the host of Get in the Door podcast, Professor Scott Plum and Bill Helkamp, have developed the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. For only $495, you can receive personal coaching from the same sales professionals you enjoy on this podcast. It all starts with a discussion to give us your insights into your specific goals, challenges, needs, and motivation. After your 1-hour online session to jumpstart your coaching process, you will receive 5 more half-hour individual coaching sessions to enable you to make improvements over time and create new habits. Most salespeople make their money back with just one sale. Go to getinthedoorpodcast.com to contact Bill or Scott about the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. Do you believe you deserve better results? Now is the time to invest in yourself and invest in your future.
Well, our final segment is our golden nugget. This is a quote, and this one is from Thomas Friese. The questions you ask are more important than the things you could ever say. And I thought about this in terms of the sales process, where we spend so much time learning about our product so we can blather on about it. And I'm just real focused on how important the questions that you ask and what you find out about what the client wants to do and where they want to go are much more important than all the things you could say.
Right. It's a good reminder of the importance of continuing to gather and seek information. Anticipate some of the questions that your prospect may be asking and think about some of the information that you want to gather. And if we really concentrate on the questions, that's one way for us to get all those answers.
Excellent.
All this information will be available in the show notes at getinthedoorpodcast.com. So check that out.
And then next week, we're going to have Chapter 9 of the Challenger Sale, Implementation Lessons from the Early Adopters. And our topic will be negotiation training for salespeople, point counterpoint, where Scott and I will argue and
debate,
try to throttle each other. Just debate, I guess, and discuss whether we should do negotiation training.
Mm-hmm.
Go out and get better one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.